So a lot of people wonder, how does science answer the question of when does life begin? Well, there is an entire field of science dedicated to the study of when life begins, and it's called embryology. That's a big fancy word, but all it really means is the study of embryos. And what embryology tells us is that from the moment that you were conceived, the moment that fertilization happened, you were a living, distinct, whole human being. Now, that's pretty amazing, and we can even break it down more than that. We know that you were alive because you fit every box that has to be checked when you're deciding what is a living thing or what is an organism. After all, as an embryo, a single-celled embryo or zygote, you were able to begin growing. That's something that organisms do. You metabolized by turning food into energy. You would respond to stimuli. Scientists have even found that embryos are wonderful at repairing wounds, which is a remarkable thing. We know that they're alive. You were also a distinct being. That means you weren't part of a woman's body. Embryos are attached to their mothers, yes, but they're not part of her body in the same way that my arm would be part of my body. So distinct beings have their own unique genetic code. And as an embryo, you had that. It was different from your mother's and from your father's. In fact, there's a wonderful scientist, a neurobiologist by the name of Dr. Maureen Kondik, who works at the University of Utah. And she is often asked this question: when does life begin? More specifically, when does human life begin? And when she's asked that question, she has to grapple with another question. One of the things she has to grapple with is, how do we know when one kind of cell becomes another kind of cell? How do you know that as a scientist? Well, Dr. Kondik says, that's very easy. Across the board, scientists agree that if one of two things happens, then we know that one cell has become something new. Either that cell changes in the stuff that it's made up of, we will call that its material composition, or it changes behavior. If either of those things happens, then what you have is a new kind of cell, something completely new from what it was before, but only one of those things has to happen. Dr. Kondik goes on to explain that the moment in human reproduction, the moment that sperm and egg meet, the plasma membranes of those two cells begin to merge together, meaning that egg cell changes in its material composition in about 215 milliseconds. In less than the time that takes me to snap my fingers, what we have is a new kind of cell. It went from being a human egg cell that could have survived about 24 hours in its environment to being a new kind of cell that can now survive, 100 years, given medical technology, because it became a human being. And I also said that human beings from the very beginning were whole, even at that single-celled stage. That one sounds a little bit crazy, but we can unpack it just a bit more. What I mean by that is that when you came into existence as a single-celled zygote, you were not part of a larger organism the same way that my skin cells are part of me. My skin cells, I could scratch them off the back of my hand. Some of them fell into my lap just now, which is a little bit gross. But those cells, many of them are still alive. They're going to die in just a minute. But I haven't done something wrong in scratching my hand. See, those cells, even though they contain my DNA encoding, they are part of me, and their job is to contribute to the overall function of the organism that is me. Even at that single-celled stage, you as a zygote, your parts contributed to your overall function, and you went on to do something that is absolutely remarkable. You weren't put together piece by piece from the outside. Rather, you drove your own development from within. Everything that makes you you was already there at that first stage of your development, and many of you are still developing. So what we know from the science of embryology is that from the very beginning, you and I were living, distinct, and whole human beings.